The average farm size is expanding and input costs are rising. The difference between a profitable operation and those that aren't can often depend on their marketing plan, with farmers staying on top of all the latest seed technology, equipment, and production systems. The commodity markets are no different.
Good evening and welcome to Rural America Live. I'm Janet Atkinson. Well, after volatility in the grain market during the pandemic, commodity trade continues to be pulled in different directions, leaving farmers unsure of how to market their crops. Of course, that's where the commodity investments comes in. Well, joining me here in the studio this evening, we have the president, Matthew Kruse, and also we have co-owner and administrator director, Caroline Seipt Kruse, and she has, of course, a different operation than Commstock Investments, but you guys, of course, work together throughout life and throughout business. Matthew, first of all, let's start with you. Thanks for joining us as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having us here. Glad you made it back from Brazil.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a fifth-generation farmer from Northwest Iowa. I'm president of Commstock Investments. Our core business is commodity brokerage. We also do crop insurance, and we're probably most well known for our Commstock Report, which is our market research newsletter. Most of our customer base are farmers. It's received in about 30 states across the country. I started my career on the frontier of Brazil, so I co-founded an investment group that bought land in Brazil, and so I lived there full-time for about 14 years there on the ground, and managed a 22,000 acre operation of soybeans, corn, and cotton. And so that's where I met my gorgeous Brazilian wife down there. And but we base ourselves more in Iowa now, but we still go back to Brazil quite a bit. We were actually just there for about 3 months and just got back from there now. So.
I have to say that's a pretty impressive undertaking for a fresh college grad to not only leave the country, move south of the equator, and then manage 22,000 acres.
It was definitely a challenge, but a good learning experience.
You'd do it again twice, right?
Yep.
Now, Caroline, tell us about yourself as well.
Thank you for having us here. And I'm from Patos de Minas, in Minas Gerais. Is located in the southeast of Brazil. I'm a third-generation farmer. I'm also a business administrator, co-owner, and one of the directors of a diversified farmland operation, which is called Sementes Gaúcha. Sementes Gaúcha is a family company. Was started from my dad, Rogério, and it has been in the market for over 46 years. We produce soybean seeds, which is our core business of the company, and we also diversify in coffee, corn, dairy, and beef cattle. And I'm also married with this handsome American.
You guys make a wonderful pair, of course. And Caroline, of course, whenever we were in Brazil with you guys back in January, we had the chance to learn a little bit about your family's history. And I commend your parents because they were young newlyweds who were in southern Brazil, but basically broke new ground. And we talked about 17 hours away is where they moved to basically uncharted territory.
Yes, I'm very honored what he did. I think he really worked really hard, and he was such a brave and visionary at that time, and I hope we continue this brilliant legacy.
Well, and with so many different directions that the family's business has taken, that's pretty impressive. And for you, it's been, I'm sure, impressive to see what you've done.
Yeah, it's a really inspiring story, what her parents did. A lot of people told them not to do it, but they believed in their dreams. And one of my favorite stories is how after their first year, they actually sat together with some of their friends and considered giving up and going back home because it was that tough. I mean, there was no electricity, there was no roads, there was no running water, there wasn't anything. But they decided to keep at it, give it another year, and the rest is history. So.
And here we are today.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned also the Commstock Report just a little bit ago, and I want to point out for folks that for any viewers who might be interested, we have a special promo code, RFD-TV. You can use this for a 10% discount on all annual subscriptions to the Commstock Report. You can get that. Just go to commstock.com/report. And Matthew, I'll just also toss out, I've been a farm broadcaster for a number of years, and I know the Commstock Report has been in the mix of conversation throughout that entire time. So it's a very respected publication.
Yeah, it's started by my father back in the 80s, and so it's been around the block for quite a while. It's not a flash in the pan, and so we've now I think we have probably 6 different people, analysts, contributing to the report, myself included.
Now, it's been a tough couple of days in the market, without a doubt. So tell us kind of from your perspective, what's been happening and where do you expect things to go from here?
Yeah, leading up to the drop in the market here, where we saw the market was trading sideways for quite a while, looking for some direction. It had previously been looking at what was going on. I think the drought in Argentina, and that was kind of helping prop up the market a little bit. Last week, the focus shifted, I think, because the USDA came out with basically their outlook for next season, saying that they're expecting a lot higher production number, and so they're looking at what's happening with La Nina deteriorating, and possibly shifting this summer to an El Nino. And so with El Nino, typically, not always, but typically you get above trend line yields. And so they came out with 181.5 bushels per acre, which at first glance it might seem like a big number. It would be a record yield, but it's really only about 5% more from where we were at last year at this time. And so it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And so what happens then with the way that our export markets and ethanol numbers have been dwindling, it adds a lot to our ending stocks. And so it takes us from that 1.25 billion bushels up to almost 1.9 billion bushels really quickly. And if you remember, before COVID, our ending stocks were usually around that 2 billion bushel level, and that kind of suppressed the markets and kept us under that $4 a bushel level. And so, if it takes us up to 1.9 billion bushels, we're only a stone throws away from that. So I'm not saying that that's going to send the corn market back down to $4 or anything, but that is, a possibility that there are heavier stocks coming, and so we need to be aware of that. So that's what caused, I think, the plummet in the grain prices.
So what are some of the major supply and demand factors that you guys kind of monitor and keep an eye on in the Commstock Report?
Well, several things. Of course, Brazil is a big part of it. We write a lot about Brazil. They're about halfway through their soybean harvest right now, and so we watch that pretty closely. We're expecting a record crop there. I think some of the private estimates are as high as 155 million metric tons. I may be a little bit more conservative myself, just with some of the drought in the southern part of the country. Most of Brazil is going to have a great year, but the southern part of the country, and Rio Grande do Sul particularly, is going to get hit pretty hard, and so that's going to kind of contain their yields a little bit. But nevertheless, they're going to produce 1 billion bushels more than they did last year. And so you're looking at about 150 million metric tons. So we're also looking at what's going on with the grain corridor extension in the Ukraine. A lot of people focus on the exports. I'm looking at what they're going to produce actually in Ukraine next year, because with the lack of capital and tanks and warfare going on in the backfield, it's just not conducive to trendline yields there. And so I think their production is going to drop off as well. We're looking a lot at China and what they're buying, or I should say not buying. I think it's pretty clear that they're showing a deference to buy more in Brazil first, and then kind of buy from the United States later. And so hopefully those purchases pick up, but we're still pretty heavily dependent on China. So.
It's I think it would be amazing for those folks who are outside of agriculture, the varying number of factors that impact the markets on just any given day, any given week, any given month. And here we are in a new month, and I'm sure something new is going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So how aggressive has the Commstock Report been whenever we're talking about both old and new crop, and then also looking at the 2023 crop?
So we've been pretty aggressive on old crop. We've just sold the last bit of it actually just before this most recent market drop. And so we did pretty well. I think if our subscribers followed our advice, they should be pretty happy. And so one thing that we do a little bit different in our report, we're actually putting each of our cash sale recommendations out there. And that's something that those sales recommendations are things that we use on our own farm in Iowa. It isn't just something that we throw out there. We're taking our own advice and doing that ourselves. And so, but yeah, I think our average cash price for old crop was just under $7. I know some people, depending on where they're at, got more than that, but depending on basis. But new crop, we haven't been quite as aggressive yet. We have been making some recommendations for selling some calls to get some protection that way. But we're still hopeful that there'll be some better prices yet to come, just because right now we're under what the crop insurance prices are. And so, usually you'll get another opportunity where we want to see before we make more cash sale recommendations, we want to be above those crop insurance prices. And so it might be a while before that happens, but that's kind of what we're looking for.
Now, you also say that, these are recommendations that you guys employ on your own farm there in Iowa. For your clients, that's got to come with somewhat of a comfort to know that you're putting what you're saying to use yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a distinguishing factor, that we aren't, we have skin in the game, right? Yeah. We're actually doing this ourselves. And so, we can feel that same emotion, but we're farming in Northwest Iowa, and I think my father's put in his 50th crop already, so he's been at it for a while.
Now, we have a gentleman that you guys know, Eric, is joining us from Royal, Iowa. He was giving you a hard time here before the show. Do you want to take a chance before he has a chance? Tell us who he is, about him.
Yeah, let's throw him a hardball question.
Now, Eric, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself? As we said, you're from Royal, Iowa. So for you, what makes the Commstock Report valuable, of course, to your customers?
Yeah, so I'm dealing with clients from a lot of different states, like Matthew alluded to there. So we have to employ real world IDs in everything that we do, and so we're sometimes backing up with actual capitals and monitoring levels and all of those to a real world applicability that a lot of services may not. So I think that's pretty. But we're very keen to thoughts and strategies, and one of the things we do a lot of it, speculative trade, or just market bearing. Anything that seems will be.
Now, I'm going to say here, before we were talking with you, your audio was perfectly solid here beforehand, so he might be playing a trick on us where he's just dropping his voice every other word. Talk about the working relationship that you have with the gentleman out in the field that's like Eric.
We're available, every day. We're talking to them all the time. That our brokers are well ingrained into what's going on, and so those brokers are a wealth of information because they're talking to people all over the country, and they know what's going on, and it's really important that they have their finger on the pulse of the markets, and we can kind of share that information and make decisions accordingly. So.
Now, is Eric one of the contributors to the Commstock Report?
Yeah, that's right. Eric provides us some of the afternoon commentary in that report for what we saw in the day, and I think it's really vital information. And he'll provide a lot of the trading strategies and recommendations as well.
And he doesn't drop every other word?
No.
We'll give Eric a hard time with that for the future, of course. That was Eric out of Royal, Iowa. Now, before we head to break, and we're going to do that here in just a little bit, Caroline, we want to bring you back into the conversation. We've been talking about the commodity markets specifically, but if you would, tell us a little bit again about your company and, of course, your farming operation that's based in Brazil.
Well, my parents migrated from Rio Grande do Sul in 1976, and at that time there is no crop farming in that region where the lands were located, and was very hard in the beginning because there is no electricity, and the condition of the roads were bad, and they had to face lots of different problems and challenges. And but I think he was a brave and such a visionary person that could take this amazing opportunity and start developing this land to produce. And Sementes Gaúcha started in 1976, and the first year they began producing soybeans in the first year, and then they started diversifying coffee, corn, cattle, beef cattle, and dairy. And
I just remember the story your mom was saying how that they would have to take a water wagon down to a river, fill it up, and bring that back to the farmstead, and that was their source of water for in the very beginning.
And I think I also remember you guys talking about their living quarters at that time also was a little bit rough around the edges, so to speak, too.
Yeah, it was very difficult, you know, and they were very brave and have the courage to keep going. And I think they are very happy what they have right now. And I also have two brothers, Alexandre and Felipe. Both of them are agronomists. And we lead and are managing the whole farm operation together.
That's wonderful. Family involved, and then bringing you in from North America, and then bringing you from South America.
Exactly.
So you guys are just taking over the world.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that we have Eric back joining us again. Now, Eric is one of your brokers, and he is based out of Royal, Iowa. So, Eric, let's check and see, can we hear you now, sir?
I'm hoping so.
There we go. We're good. We got all three words there.
Okay. Yeah, joining
I was
from the
kind of hoping it wasn't going to work this time, but I guess here we are.
Eric, why don't we pick up where we left off?
Yeah, so I think that with regards to the Commstock Report and how we can bring a little added value compared to some comparable services, context based from the Canadian, Brazil, from Ukraine to Montana, and that's a little different perspective, a little real world applicability that gives us an edge for sure. One of the things that we do is a lot of speculative trades for our clients, working in markets that maybe aren't their everyday bread and butter, but it gives them an opportunity to diversify a little bit and do some side investing within the commodity realm.
What do you think is one of the things that some of your clients rely on most that they find available through the Commstock Report?
So the biggest bulk of our subscribership is farmers, as Matthew alluded to earlier, and the farmers that read the Commstock Report religiously, follow the hedging advice, follow the sales tactics, report very good sales prices, very good timing. They are always quick to applaud what we're able to help them accomplish. And I think that's the biggest thing that we set out to do every day, is just help ag producers do the best they can with their marketing, because it is one of the most difficult aspects that they face on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's probably something that we hear the most about from our subscribership and from our clients.
Well, it certainly does sound encouraging. And anything else that you want to add or toss out at him here while you got him?
No, I noticed the Kansas City Chiefs football in the back. That's what I was looking at. So he's not a fair weather fan, by the way.
Yeah.
So he's pretty happy about that.
About the big win that took place just a couple weeks ago. Well, again, Eric, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us not only once but also twice. We always appreciate it. Now, before we go to break, I also want to let you know that we just want to remind you that we have a special available for you. Now, for viewers who are interested tonight, you can use the promo code RFD-TV for 10% discount on all subscriptions to the Commstock Report. Go to commstock.com/report. And of course, we'll open our phone lines in just a moment. And welcome back to Rural America Live. Tonight we are joined by the president of Commstock Investments, Matthew Kruse, and co-owner and administrative director, Caroline Seipt Kruse, who is I am just getting all kinds of tongue-tied, Caroline. I apologize. That is with her family farm that is based out of South America. And of course, we are talking with him here this evening because Commstock Investments hosted a tour to Brazil. That was back in January. It certainly was quite an experience. I had the honor to participate in that experience. So first of all, Matthew, let's start off with what led you guys to put this together, because it was like kind of wrangling cats, I'm going to say.
Well, we covered Brazil quite a bit in our report, and I think it's something that American farmers in general need to be at least aware of what's going on down there, because it's increasingly having an impact on our market prices here back home. When I first went to Brazil over 20 years ago, Brazil, there was producing about 35 million metric tons per year, and now it's 5 times that. They're at going to be at 150 million metric tons per year, and so they're just going to, the Brazilian agricultural complex is going to continue to grow and impact the market, and so I think the farmers enjoy going down there and seeing the perspective and what's going what's happening down there.
Not just the farmers, also the media.
That's
We
right.
thoroughly
That's right.
enjoyed it as well, too.
Yeah.
Now, Caroline, tell us a little bit more about what we had the chance to see on your family's operation.
Well, we got in our Gaúcha farm at noon, and my family were waiting for everybody with a traditional Brazilian barbecue. So we had lunch there, and we introduced my family to the whole group. And after that, we head out to our dairy operation. In our dairy operation, we have around 800 Holstein cows producing 6,500 gallons of milk per day. And we sell all of this milk direct to Nestle. So you also use a carousel technology system from a company that's called Gaia Westphalia. This company is an American-German company, and you use this carousel and runs the cows run in this carousel like 40 cows per cycle, and we milk this. We have the cow milk 3 times a day.
One thing that I think is interesting about their operation is how well their coffee is integrated with their dairy, which is kind of unique. So they're taking the manure from the dairy and they're using that as fertilizer in the coffee. They're taking the harvest residue from the coffee and using that as bedding in the cattle. And so you don't find that very many places.
You don't find that in Iowa.
No. And they also have their own biomethane digester, so they're actually generating electricity from the methane that comes from the liquid manure as well. And so you don't find that in too many places either.
No,
so they're actually self-sufficient in a lot of their electricity needs.
Is that pretty unique in Brazil, or is that growing in popularity to have such the cyclical use of all the goods and all the products throughout? Is it something pretty common?
Most of farmers use that thing.
It's becoming more common for sure.
More common.
Especially solar. I think we see a lot more. On our last trip, we saw a lot more solar there this time, I thought, too. So.
And coffee was the most recent addition to the farm, wasn't it, or to the farm operation? So we did have the chance to go over and visit one of your coffee fields, and I don't believe any of us had the chance to do that before, so that was another interesting experience.
So we have our coffee farms in the Cerrado Mineiro region of Minas Gerais in Brazil. It's a very well-known region and a very productive coffee region in the state of Minas Gerais. And we have 2 areas of coffee farms. We could show them one area that's around like 1,000 acres of coffee. And we could show all the coffee growing. Actually, to learn and to plant a coffee, like have to have patience and it takes a while, because let's say if you plant a tree of coffee, it can take 2.5 years to have the first crop. So it needs time, it takes time.
It takes a long time, it's a lot of investment.
A lot of investment, but...
And there's like basically two harvests each season too, right?
Yeah.
Because
we do a mechanical and manual harvesting, and usually our coffee harvest starts at basically like end of May through August. And
you have a machine that goes through and harvests, and then you have manual harvest that goes through and basically picks up everything that the coffee harvester left behind. So.
Needless to say, the coffee business is not a short-term commitment.
No.
It's expensive. I think we calculated
it. It can take like a while
it was generated
months.
Something like $5,000 an acre in revenue. It's a capital-intensive business.
And that kind of led to the next step in the business. You guys are importing coffee into the United States, so that's another big step.
Yes, we have a U.S. company that is called a U.S. coffee company that's called Gaúcha Specialty Coffee. And we import our specialty green coffee from Brazil to U.S. roasters. And we are looking forward to keep building more direct relationships to the roasters. And I think, in my opinion, it's really important that we can meet these roasters face to face, that they can see and meet the producers and know how the coffee where the coffee comes from.
Yeah, a lot of I think consumers in general these days want to know where their food and beverage are all coming from. And so we're trying to form those direct trade relationships with roasters and coffee shops, and so they can have a chance to actually meet the coffee producer here.
Now, I also want to toss out, I told you we were going to open our phone lines, and then I forgot to give you the phone number. So let's do that, 877-871-6733. You'd think I say that enough that it'd be off the top of my head, but some days it does work well and some days not so much. Now, 877-731-6733 is the number to call. Again, our phone lines are open if you wanted to visit with Caroline and Matt about their Brazilian operation or their Iowa operation, or of course the Commstock Report, most importantly, just because so much good information about things that impact agriculture here today and tomorrow. Now, Matthew, tell us what makes your coffee different from some of the other coffee that's out there on the market?
Yeah, well, it starts with the production process, right? Any good coffee needs to be produced at a high elevation. And so our coffee is produced at about 3,000 feet. So that helps quite a bit. I think it also helps that it's irrigated, because there is a rainy season and a dry season in Brazil. And so that irrigation system helps kind of get through that dry season a lot better. And there's also a pretty rigorous cleaning and classification process that takes place at the local co-op. And so, our objective is to provide a bag of green coffee that is as uniform and consistent as possible in terms of, the color and coffee bean size and grading. But I think mostly just comes down to our location, because, Brazil is the largest coffee producer in the world. Minas Gerais, the state that we're in, is the largest coffee producing state in Brazil. And then we're located in the largest coffee producing region within that state called the Cerrado Mineiro region. And so I don't think her dad knew that when he migrated there, that because there wasn't any coffee at that time. And so it ended up being where her father relocated, became the largest, highest concentration of coffee production in the world.
They were definitely pioneers.
And I think like the Brazilian coffee is a very well-known coffee in the world for the great quality, aroma, flavor. So it was what makes a big difference to bring all the green coffee to the U.S.
Now, we didn't plan on this earlier, but you guys just happened to mention, you're here in Nashville tonight, but you're heading out tomorrow and you're going to New York City. What are you going to New York for?
We'll be attending a coffee shop in New York City where you can, develop our coffee and meet new roasters and show the green coffee of the new production.
It's basically a coffee conference, trade show, and so just looking for new customers that want to try and buy Carol's coffee directly rather than go through a big importer.
I myself, I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but you have a little bit here every now and then. And of course, the roasters have become very popular in recent years. But if I remember correctly, the majority, if not all, the beans are exported green, which I hadn't seen a green coffee bean before. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But then to go through the roasting process is what makes them and gives them the aroma that we enjoy so much.
Yeah, the growing is pretty hard, but that's just one part of it. There's a whole nother layer of work to it after that. So yeah, it's pretty complicated.
What have you guys learned along the way that you didn't know before you got started in that side of the business? Good question.
Yeah, probably a lot. A lot of it, we've learned a lot about how to export a container of coffee, I suppose.
I think we learned all this step because bringing the green coffee from Brazil to the US takes lots of things that you have to organize, and it's very bureaucratic.
And we
all
started
the documents, and you have to make sure that everything will be at the right line. So
and we kind of started this when the pandemic started, and so they had all those global logistical issues, and it made it difficult to get our
impeccable
coffee.
Timing. Now, we also had the chance to visit the cooperative that you guys deliver your coffee to. Talk about that, because there was also the opportunity to taste some of the coffee from there in the region and even judge it just a little bit.
We visited one of the biggest co-op warehouse of coffee in the Cerrado Mineiro region, which is called Espocacer, and where they could demonstrate how to roast the coffee, how to classify the coffee, and also taste different types of coffee. And they also have a grading system, which is called cupping, where the coffee specialized can, try the coffee and classify its level and see the quality of the different types of coffee.
Oh. And if you've tried the coffee from there, it's generally a lot stronger, and so they serve it in very small cups. It's not like when you go to Starbucks and they have the grande, it's all watered down. And so I think most Americans would probably, if they tried her Brazilian coffee, they'd think, well, that's pretty strong stuff.
Yeah.
So.
But you'd be ready to go for the rest of the day.
That's right. Yeah, be energized.
That's what it's all about. Now, from the cooperative, we also kept going because your family has another aspect of the agricultural business, and we visited the grain processing facility. And of course, you mentioned earlier that both of your brothers are agronomists, but one of the brothers works specifically with this part of the farm operation. Tell us more about the seed processing facility.
As I said, the soybean seeds is our core business of the company, and we produce the soybean seeds from a company that's called Brasmax. Brasmax is an Argentinian company, and we sell our seeds to different states of Brazil, like Minas Gerais, Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás. And when we start our harvest in beginning of March, and end in April. So we stored all of these seeds for till like September, October, and then we start to deliver to the egg dealers.
It's a little bit different than what you'd see in the United States, where they're producing it and processing it and bagging it and sending it directly to the farmer in Brazil. And so it's but yeah, that's their core business. So it's different than producing just the regular grain soybeans. They're producing the seed beans, and so they for example, it's pretty time sensitive during harvest because they want to make sure they get the right moisture levels when they're doing that. So they have a pretty large fleet of combines. I think they saw like 7 of them that you've seen in some of the footage. So
I was going to say, I don't know if we
see.
had that video, but it was pretty neat to see the fleet of combines that you had, but then also they were pretty tidy too. They were clean, they were ready to go and ready for business whenever business comes around again.
Yeah.
So talk a bit about the vast difference that you guys see when you're talking about raising a crop in Brazil versus raising a crop in Iowa. I think whenever farmers talk to me, having had the experience to go to Brazil, that's kind of where a lot of their questions sort of lie, is what is different. So talk about the growing season, if you would.
Well, I think one of the advantages that the United States have is our winter, because it basically, at least in Iowa, where I'm from, I don't know about down in Texas, but in Iowa we have that winter kill, and it really depresses the bugs and infestation, diseases and things like that. Brazil is warm year round, and so it's basically a year-round greenhouse, tropical greenhouse, and so they have a much higher level of bug pressure, and so they're spraying more insecticide and probably more fungicide than we are here, just because it's raining more often, and so they have a higher chemical cost in general, I would say, than what we do. They're also, because of that, I think a lot of the seed companies are coming out with more seed technology, kind of insect-resistant varieties down in Brazil that aren't even, available here or really offered up here as well. So that's just one thing that I see that's different.
What stands out to you, Caroline, having grown up in Brazil and now spending time in Iowa? Is there something that jumps out to you? Is it the winter that really kind of grabs your attention as far as the difference as well?
Well, related to the winter, I think I got used to the cold weather because before coming to the U.S., I lived in Canada for 4 years, so I was used to get to this cold weather, so it was not a big shock for me. And being in Iowa, it's kind of being home because you see all of the farmers, all of the farms, and where I could see in my region. So it was really familiar being here too. And I really like living in Iowa. I think it's a very, safe and great state.
And a great place to raise your little boy now, too.
Exactly. Yes. Now I have a little boy, so hopefully he will be a farmer too, and continue our legacy. So
I have a lot of faith.
It'd be nice to experience the Iowa farms and also the South American Brazilian farms.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith that he'll definitely have farming in the blood without any doubt.
Yeah.
Well, again, our phone lines are open. We would love to hear from you tonight, 877-731-6733. If you have a question for our guest, of course, we are talking with Matthew and Caroline. Stay with us. We are going to continue our conversation right here on RFD-TV on this special edition of Rural America Live. And of course, welcome back to Rural America Live. Janet Atkinson here with you. Again, our phone lines are open, so call in with your questions. We would love to hear from you. The number to call is 877-731-6733. And of course, we also want to remind you that Commstock Investments is offering a special discount to our viewers tonight. If you use the promo code RFD-TV, you can get a 10% discount off of all annual subscriptions to the Commstock Report. Just go to commstock.com/report. Again, that promo code, easy to remember, RFD-TV. And of course, as we continue to move right on through the show here this evening, we are now joined by another guest. But before we jump into visiting with him, I wanted to circle back to a conversation that we were having here during the break. And we were talking about our trip to Brazil that took place back in January. That was the Farmland Tour, the Commstock Investments Farmland Tour. So when are you guys going to do this again, Caroline?
We haven't decided yet, but usually we do this tour in mid of January, like every year. But we haven't decided when we're gonna do the next one. So hopefully we'll be in 2024. But if someone get interest, just go to commstock.com and sign up for the tour.
And is it that easy just to get your name in the hat, so to speak, whenever the time is right?
Yes.
Yep. They can.
Yes.
There's a place you can find an email there on the Commstock website where it talks about the tour.
Mm-hmm. And before we jump into our next Skype interview, what kind of feedback did you have from the farmer participants this year?
Of those that made it back, you mean? No, they all made it back. I'm joking. I think everybody loved it. Everyone seemed to be really pleased, and somebody even got a permanent tattoo on our trip. So there might have been some alcohol involved in that, but I think they had a good time on the tour. Everybody had good things to say about it.
And at least somebody has something that will stay with him forever.
That's right.
Other than memories.
That's right.
Shout out Dustin.
In my opinion, I think the Americans were really interested in seeing the riches of agriculture in Brazil.
Absolutely.
Like as the same way that Brazilians would love to come to the West to see their farm operations, the technology. So I think it's like a great and amazing opportunity to make them exchange their knowledge and learn more about the Brazilian agriculture.
And I will say that as somebody who's, driven through the Midwest, driven through crop country, farmers on the tour with us from Canada, from the U.S. who've covered a lot of ground in crop country, everybody was really amazed by the vast miles of ground that was covered in crops.
Yeah, and I've been to Mato Grosso several times, and it still blows my mind.
Yeah.
You can't capture it in a picture. I mean, it's just a massive ocean of soybeans everywhere. And so it's really impressive, and it makes you want to short the soybean market a little bit every time you go there, because it's crazy. There's really no other place like it in the world.
No, and you also don't see emus in soybean fields in Iowa.
That's right. There's emu walking through the soybean fields all the time, but they don't eat enough soybeans to make a dent in the market. So.
I did ask. They have wild hog problems, but they said the emu, they just like soybeans. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting conversation. Now, as promised, we have another Commstock Report analyst joining us here now, and that is going to be, from Bloomington, Illinois. Among other things, he writes their Sunday morning preview. Now, I understand that you also like to try to give a weekly preview of what you think is to come for the week, and Joe Camp helps make that happen. Now, Joe, how do you contribute to the report, and of course, how does it also help your readers become better marketers?
Sure. I start off with that Sunday market preview every week and try to give an outlook for opening calls, the initial start, and then take a look at what's ahead. Definitely lay out the calendar in terms of economic events and also upcoming crop reports. And then beyond that, I'm also a contributor every week with a regular Friday afternoon report. And I try to recap the recent week's action and talk about the current events and whether or not they continue to support our overall outlook.
Matthew, you want to follow up with him on this?
So, Joe, I'm gonna put you on the spot. So, how help our readers? I guess. Well, how does our report help our readers become better marketers? I mean, how would you sum that up in a couple of sentences?
We have to use our Commstock report and the commentary to really support those recommendations that you mentioned are explicit. We're telling you what's going on in terms of, like you mentioned, your operation, your dad's, what you're doing in terms of making cash sales, and how we're working with customers using futures and options to manage risk. So within that, we're taking every view we can, from the fundamentals of the supply and demand of it all, to the technical nature of the charts, and also to the mechanicals of market structure and where traders are positioned. So it's a well-rounded look, and I try to encapsulate that when I'm writing for the Commstock report, something that I know is a voice that speaks for the broader team and is there to back up those recommendations. Again, on the cash market side, when we're working with farmers to advise sales of corn, soybeans, and wheat, cattle, and hogs, but also on the hedging side and the speculative side, like Eric mentioned earlier. So we're working to tie that all in together and support the outlook with those actionable recommendations, and with the brokerage side of it being a branch office of Commstock, being able to put those strategies to the test and execute them in the market.
Great insight from Joe.
Very good. Thank you,
You
Joe.
put him on the spot and he was ready for you.
Yep.
Joe, thank you for taking the time to join us here this evening. We certainly appreciate it, sir. Well, with that, let's go to our phone lines. Again, the phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 877-731-6733. And with that, we have Alan from Kansas on the line with us. Alan, why don't you go ahead with your question or comment?
Yeah, I just want to know, looks like, Caroline, you have a very diversified operation there at the Samatos Grachos. I'm just wondering which most profitable for you, the dairy production, or the soybean production, or the coffee production?
Well, I would say the soybean seed production will be the most profitable product in the company, and then coffee and dairy.
Coffee and dairy.
Yes.
Yeah, the soybeans is your core business.
Is my core business of the company, so it's like, I could say 60% of the revenue.
Now, I also want to ask after that, what's your favorite?
Well, I love like agriculture, and since I was a child, I used to go to the farm with my parents and spending weekends, long weekends. So I could learn a little bit of everything. But I think coffee is such my passion.
I thought so.
Yeah, that's why I started this coffee business in the U.S. as I'm a coffee producer, and so why not start exporting the green coffee to the U.S.
You guys gave us a bag of your coffee, and I meant to bring that with me today so we could have it here on set, and I totally forgot.
Great.
But I was thinking about you guys.
Okay.
And then I left it at home. I guess I didn't want anybody here at the office to claim it. Well, again, our phone lines are open. We would love to hear from you, 877-731-6733. We have Kenny on the line with us out of Iowa. Kenny, go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, it's a very interesting program or whatever for the crop side of it and the coffee side of it. But I was wondering, I live in Iowa or whatever, northwest Iowa to be specific, but under what name would her coffee be sold, or where could I purchase it at?
You can go to our Gaúcha Coffee website, and you can purchase from there. We sell as a ground bean and also roast.
Ground bean
and whole bean. Yeah, you are able to get this bag of coffee through our website, which is www.gaúchacoffee.com.
We should spell Gaúcha. It's Gaucha.
coffee.com.
There you go.
So, yeah, we would probably pronounce it differently, but it's GAUCHA coffee.com.
There you go. 877-731-6733 is the number to call if you have a question or comment for our guest here this evening. So as we continue on, what does Commstock Report forecast, of course, since we're talking about Brazil, what do you guys forecast for the Brazil crop?
Well, as I said earlier, I think it's going to be a good crop. There are some late harvest, late planting issues going on in Paraná, which is it's the second largest state for second crop corn production in Brazil. But for the most part, Brazil is catching up and they're on time. I think they're probably going to be done here in the next 10 days with their soybean harvest, and so the corn, second crop corn planting that's following it is kind of right behind. And so I think 80% of their corn crop in Mato Grosso has got in within February, which is kind of the ideal window. And so there'll be a little bit that goes in here in early March. It's a little late, but it's fairly normal. So I think, overall we're looking at 150 million metric tons for soybeans and probably around 126 million metric tons for their overall corn crop. So they have 3 different corn crops in Brazil. You have to be able to distinguish between them. So they used to just have 1, and then they added 2, so their second crop is the largest. And now they got a 3rd one that they calculate as well, but it's pretty small yet. So.
Awesome. Very cool. Now, I understand that we have another caller on the line, and also we have the website for your coffee.
Oh, great.
Yes.
GauchaCoffee.com.
Exactly. Yeah, GauchaCoffee.com.
Gaúcha.
Yep.
I cannot say it as pretty as you do.
Oh, you're doing pretty well.
So check it out. That is the coffee that they bring in from Brazil right there. And we have another caller on the line with us, and we have Paul from Utah. Paul, go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, this has been an interesting show. Thank you. I was just wondering how the young people get involved in agriculture over in Brazil. Here in America, we have the FFA. I wondered if there was anything in Brazil, Future Farmers of Brazil, or something similar that gets young people involved in agriculture.
I guess I'm not really familiar with many organizations like that, to be honest. But I would say that agriculture in Brazil, as a general statement, is probably more widely recognized and more accepted because it makes up a much larger percentage of their country's GDP. It's like 22%, 23%, versus here in the United States, it's less than 2%. And so the country recognizes the ag industry as kind of their bread and butter. It's really, I think, kept them from a recession in some of their more difficult years. And so I think a lot of people, even if they're didn't grow up on a farm necessarily, there's a lot of people interested in studying agronomy. And so they're just, as a general statement, they're exposed to agriculture a lot more because you see it everywhere, more than I think you probably would in the United States. It's kind of hard to explain. It's just somewhat of a cultural
It's kind of
nuance.
Ingrained a little bit more, I think, there than what you see commonly in some of the areas across the United States. And I made a comment whenever we were down there. You guys were at the other end of the bus, but as we were driving through some of the communities, I mean, every business along the street, if not everyone, at least 90% of them were tied to agriculture openly. It wasn't just like a restaurant, it was an ag business.
And this is maybe cheesy, but like in the United States, if you might speak highly of a profession like, oh, this person's a doctor, for example, and people might think, oh, wow. In Brazil, it's that way for farmers. If you say, what do you do? I'm a farmer. Like, oh, wow, like that's really cool, because everybody knows the farming industry, the ag industry has done really well. And so it's a highly respected industry.
Now we have another caller on the line. We've only got about 5 minutes left, so let's go back to the phone line. We have Clark from Illinois on with us. Clark, go ahead with your question or comment. Clark, we can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on there, so let's give it one more try. Clark from Illinois, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Clark Floyd. I'm a semi-retired farmer. Thank you for you people being on TV. Yeah, this is Clark Floyd from Bridgeport, Illinois. I'm a semi-retired farmer. I despise retirement. I thank you for people being here.
I think I know a few farmers like that.
I enjoy you folks being on TV.
Well, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. I hope, someday you can come down to Brazil to see the Brazilian farms operation down there.
And I will point out that some of the folks that were on the tour, they were not retired, but they were testing the waters, maybe. And they had always wanted to try to visit Brazil, and they thought this was a perfect thing, and it seems like it really worked out for them.
Yeah, and it doubles as a vacation, I think, for some of them. But at the same time, we pushed them pretty hard. We saw a lot of things. We covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
In a long day.
Yeah.
Now we have Sheldon from Ohio on the line with us. Sheldon, go ahead with your question or comment.
I want to know how many acres you think are going to come out of production in this year for solar panels.
Oh boy, for solar panels, yeah, that's a tough one. I'm assuming you're talking about in Brazil. I don't know if I could give you a number precisely.
I think he said no. He's talking about the United States.
Oh, here in the United States.
But I think that'd still be tough to do.
Yeah, it's still pretty tough for me to answer. I'm sure there probably is an amount. I don't know that it's all that significant. It's probably not significant enough to impact the commodity prices, but it's probably something. But I couldn't tell you, to be honest, exactly what that number is. But
on that front we saw some solar use in Brazil. Is it really gaining in a lot of popularity? They have a better access to the sun, of course.
Yeah, well, it was just kind of an impression I had on our last tour. I mean, they've obviously always had solar, but it just seemed like we saw more of it on farms. I don't know if you had that impression as well, but it's gotten cheaper as time has gone on. Obviously, they have the year-round sunlight, which helps too. So,
well, before we wind things down, we've only got a couple minutes left. One thing I did want to hit on, we don't have the graphic, but we talked about the transportation infrastructure in Brazil versus the United States. Brazil's working on improving the infrastructure, but right now the United States does definitely have the better system put in place.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that's probably one of the number one questions I get is, has the infrastructure improved down there much? Because that's still one of the advantages that we have here in the United States over them, is a lot better infrastructure with our railroads, and we have a Mississippi River cutting right through our heartland, which they do not.
And there's water back in it this year so far.
And we have water in it this year, which is nice. So that helps too. I honestly can't say they've made much progress in terms of the roads infrastructure. It just seems like they're trying to maintain what they have. And as you noticed, there was a lot of potholes that we ran into. And one of the people on our tour that was riding at the front of the bus, kind of likened it to an action movie, because we were juking and jiving around those potholes quite a bit. But one area that they have made a lot of progress in is their port infrastructure, because they're producing more every year. They need to be able to get it out of the country. And so they've developed a lot of port infrastructure in their Amazon. And 10 years ago, they weren't exporting hardly anything out of there. And now I think Mato Grosso probably exports maybe a third of their soybeans out of the Amazon.
Well, Caroline, Matthew, thank you very much for sitting down with us tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Again, they are with Commstock Investments. You can save on the Commstock Report. Go to their website for a 10% discount on the annual subscription. We certainly appreciate them taking the time to sit down and join us. Been a wonderful conversation. As you can tell, they definitely know a lot about Brazil. So check out their report to get more insight throughout the year.